Hello and welcome to Within the Frame. I'm Han-dan in Seoul. The enigmatic occult Exuma continues to dominate the Korean box office, surpassing 6 million spectators in just about 10 days since its release, now heading quickly toward 7 million. Also breathing new life into the Korean cinema that have been slumping is Oscar-nominated Past Lives by Korean-Canadian director Celine Song. Re-release of old movies like Beat and City of the Rising Sun are also rejuvenating the theaters. To help us unravel and explore more of these exciting cinematic stories, we're now joined by Jason Betervais, film critic and professor at Kyungdong University. It's great to have you back.
Yeah, it's great to be here as always.
We're also delighted to have distinguished film critic Pierce Conran with us this evening. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks very much for having me.
All right, let's start off with you, Jason. What is behind the explosive popularity of Exuma?
Well, it's just a really fun, great movie, actually. I was very fortunate to watch the movie at the premiere, the local premiere here in Seoul, and there was just a lot of excitement surrounding the film. I've been noticing online that the director is actually quite popular. Jang Jin-he made Sabaha and
Right.
The Priest, and The Priest was actually very popular here in Korea, and Sabaha, whilst not as popular, but it's certainly kind of accumulated an audience after its theatrical release, and it's very much appreciated by its audience. And I'm a professor here in Korea, and students often talk about that film. And I think there's just a lot of interest in in the occult and the film's religious themes, and the casting as well. Kim Go-eun is just she's terrific in the movie, and so it was very well advertised and marketed ahead of its release. And also, I think within the industry there was a lot of excitement surrounding the script. So I've known about this film for a few years, actually, because of the pandemic, and I heard that the script is terrific, and I think going into its first week there was just a lot of anticipation. But even so, I was actually surprised looking at the reservation numbers. A day before its release, it was like 200,000-300,000 admissions. So that was pretty unusual, especially for a Korean film at the moment. So this was before the film had actually been or hit screens. And then once kind of the film had been released, it generated a lot of strong word of mouth. People were very excited. I mean, it's a horror film, so people talking about how scary the film is and particular sequences, and also how the film kind of tackles, try not to give away too many spoilers, but how it kind of tackles Korea's past as well. So I think there's a lot in there for audiences to digest, but it's also just a lot of fun, and I think as a result it's just generated a lot of interesting conversations around the water cooler at work, and on the subway, and just mixing as a family. And so yeah, it's all ages going to see it as well. It's younger viewers, it's older viewers, and that's what when you've got a 10 million ticket viewer movie, and this is approaching that, whether it hits it or not I'm not sure, but certainly it needs to attract that wide demographic, and that's what it's done.
Pierce, let's get your review of the movie Exuma, and what aspects of the film did you find particularly engaging or compelling?
Well, first I have to piggyback a little bit on Jason's comments. I think we share pretty similar views of the film. It's true that it's a script that I had heard about as well several times, it's pretty unusual to hear about a script being talked about in the industry quite a lot. The only other recent example I can think of is the show LTNS, Long Time No Sex. That was another one that was talked about a lot, and that turned out to be very good as well. But getting to Exuma, it's a film that at its heart is quite simple. It's about four people, who are digging a hole, and then they dig themselves deeper and deeper into the hole, and things just get worse and worse. And so through that kind of very simple structure, you get a very effective occult horror film. Director Jang Jae-hyun is very well known for making occult films. Jason's already mentioned them: Sabaha the Sixth Finger and The Priest. So he's really, really interested in this milieu, in shamanism, Buddhism, Christianity, and the various little rituals and little secrets and the supernatural. I think he has his own questions. So you feel that he's kind of grappling with his own questions about the unknown. I felt that with his earlier films. And when I watch his earlier films, I kind of think, which character does he see himself as in the movie? And it's kind of a fun exercise. And then with Exuma, he kind of it's the one where he's kind of gone even deeper with it. And I think it's probably his most effective film yet. And while we do like occult films, this is really an occult film made by someone who is really, really interested in the occult. And it shows, and people are just very, very excited about it. I also agree about the cast, which is obviously, it's a very good cast, and it seems very cleverly built so that it will attract a very wide audience. Obviously, you've got the older actors, Tae Min-sik and Yoo Hae-jin, who are kind of getting in the older traditional viewers, and you have the younger stars, Kim Go-eun and Lee Do-hyun's kind of like his breakout film role. He's already very big from dramas, The Glory, and lots of other stuff. But they're kind of the so-called MZ generation, this moniker we use for millennials and Generation Z here in Korea. So they have this wonderful interplay and this kind of banter and camaraderie, at the same time going through this kind of very exciting mystery thriller that sort of also matches a bit of a TV structure a little bit. It's told through a number of chapters, but also I don't want to spoil it, so I think I'll leave it at that for the moment.
All right. Occult, not exactly my favorite genre, but I hear that even for non-enthusiasts like myself, it's really captivating and entertaining to watch. And of course, there's a bit of historical message as well about Japan's oppressive colonial rule, about which Koreans feel very strongly. They have strong emotions about. And Jason, occult films explore issues related to the supernatural or the mystical or other elements beyond the realm of normal human experience. And this much is universal. But how do Korean occult films compare with their international counterparts?
It's interesting. I mean, certainly the Priest's director's kind of first feature film. I mean, there are comparisons to The Exorcist, and whereas, I mean, and it is very similar to The Exorcist, actually, but whereas something like Exuma feels a lot more kind of rooted in local traditions and local religion, and I think when you explore Korean cinema over the years, there's just so many films that deal with religion and deal with death. And, you know, some of Park Chan-wook's films with Catholicism and Thirst, for example, and then you've got a film like Secret Sunshine by Lee Chang-dong. And if you go back, you've got films like Kim Ki-young that deal with shamanism. And, yeah, it's a really fascinating subject. And I think what's interesting about Exuma is that it's really kind of blown up into this mega box office hit. And I think part of that is because it's just accessible. I mean, there is a lot in the film, and there's a lot that I struggle to understand as well, you know, as a non-Korean. And I'll be very curious to see how the film is received internationally. It's actually going to be released in various countries over the next week or so in the UK, the United States, Australia, and various other places. So, and I think it just goes to show how, you know, the popularity of Korean cinema, that, you know, a film like this that's kind of dealing with some very kind of Korean and local themes and religion and somewhat complex, and the fact that, you know, there's an audience outside there for it, but there's also an audience here, very much an audience here in Korea. And I just loved the way the film does kind of delve into these kind of complexities, you know, religion and history, and that's what's long fascinated me about Korean cinema, and that's why I'm here today. And so Exuma really got me excited when I saw it at the premiere here in Seoul.
Right, so hopefully the deep roots of local culture, shamanism, and also religion, hopefully it'll all captivate to the eyes of foreign audience in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and I just piggybacking on one of Pierce's point, the director he's really knowledgeable when it comes to this kind of, you know, these themes, and it really shows. And I remember watching Sabaha, and I was just completely amazed at the level of research that goes into a film like that. And I think that's very much on display here in Exuma as well.
It's also an important element, isn't
Absolutely.
it? The knowledge.
Yeah.
About
so
he's
big on the detail.
Right.
And I think that, you know, I think audiences are really receptive to that.
Pierce, occult movies have enjoyed steady popularity here in Korea with their mysterious and often spine-chilling narratives. The biggest box office success yet to date was The Wailing, or Koksang, by director Na Hong-jin, drawing 6.8 million spectators. Do you project Exuma to break the 10 million mark, which is considered the yardstick of success here in Korea?
I mean, 10 million is not so much the yardstick of success, it's the yardstick of, like, mega huge success. I mean, it's like 1 in 5 citizens in the country. It's a really amazing barrier that the fact that so many films have passed it is incredible. Will Exuma get there? I mean, we're already, as we talk now, we're close to 7, and it hasn't been out that long, so it's kind of hard to bet against it. But at the same time, the numbers have kind of gone down a lot compared to the last week. However, that's not really a sign of a problem, because I think last week we had the school holidays that were kind of wrapping up, and we also had the March 1st Independence holiday. So naturally, there's going to be a big drop after that. And also, there's not a huge amount of films coming out for March. I mean, in terms of Hollywood, you've got, at the end of the month, we have the new Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm not sure how successful that will be. And then for Korean films, there's almost nothing. There's a film with Son Seok-woo called Troll Factory coming out towards the end of the month. It's not a very big movie, but there's just not a lot of competition. So the fact that there's not much in its path at the moment, and given just how much the film has connected, particularly with younger viewers, people are just talking about it all the time on social media. There's just fan art everywhere. It's kind of hard to bet against it, but I can't say with certainty that it'll get over 10. We have to wait a little bit longer, but I wouldn't bet against it at this point.
Right, and the choices given to the audience, the cinema goers, is also a very important element, right, as you said, right? Jason, another film breathing more energy into Korean cinema is Celine Song's directorial debut, Past Lives. It has been nominated for both Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay at the Oscars. I mean,
Yep.
it's an honor just to be nominated, right?
Sure.
I mean, it's Oscars. But do
Yeah.
you think perhaps Past Lives will have a shot at securing a win?
Best Picture, I'm sorry to say no. Oppenheimer's going to sweep everything. It's won all the kind of precursor awards, the SAGs, the Guilds, at the BAFTAs. Yeah, the British, they have quite a big voting block there, Academy Award voters. And so, but for Best Original Screenplay, I think it could win. I'm not sure whether it will win. Anatomy of a Fall, I think, is favourite at this point. But Past Lives could very much, be a surprise. I hope it'd be great for it to win, just purely because I'm someone that follows Korean cinema. Of course, this is an American film, but a third of it was shot here. It follows this Korean-American character, and the director's father was a filmmaker as well. He directed the gangster film No. 3, which is referenced in the film. So it could win. Whether it's certainly for Best Picture, it's not going to happen. But it is, like you said, it's amazing that it's been nominated. So it's great that she's in the room, and I think the success, and she's talked about this in interviews here in Korea, that the success of Parasite has really opened up the door for many filmmakers, making movies that are not in English. And some of this film obviously is in English, but some of it's in Korean. It's dealing with Korean diaspora, and so I think Minari, of course, did so well. It was nominated for several awards, and Yoon Hyo-jung won Best Supporting Actress. And so it's kind of the Parasite effect. We've seen that in the Korean film industry, but we're also seeing films that are produced in the United States. Actually, this film was co-produced by CJ, which is a Korean studio. So they're kind of venturing into these kind of global projects, and they've been quite successful so far doing that.
Well, it's a stiff competition. We all know it, right? I mean, it's up against Barbenheimer, Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Yeah, I mean, Barbie's not really competing, but Oppenheimer is going to. I don't know if Pierce agrees with me, but I think it's going to sweep.
The most
would be a
formidable
fool to bet against Oppenheimer at this stage.
competitor, right? Now, Past Lives opened to overwhelmingly high praise. It has already won 75 awards, secured over 200 nominations at international film festivals around the world. What were the primary factors that led to the film's remarkable triumph, in your view?
Well, I have to be honest and say that I'm kind of wondering a little bit myself, because while I like the film, I'm kind of in the minority that I don't love the film. But
actually, I've heard that a lot.
I do like it.
You're not the only one.
I think it's very interesting seeing how the film is connected and why it's connected, and perhaps also where it's connected. It's certainly done very well with art house viewers in the Western world, particularly in America. And there have been a lot of films, kind of before this that have been working in a similar way. So we have, Jason's already mentioned Minari, and things like on TV's Pachinko, or ones that are not necessarily Korean, but other Asian American narratives like The Farewell, and last year's big Oscar winner, Everything Everywhere All at Once. There's definitely been, it's sort of part of that group of movies, and somehow these films are not always being received as positively outside of the West. So there's kind of a slight exoticism, maybe, I'm not sure. But again, it's a good movie. But what I think is perhaps the most interesting is how it's positioned in kind of the romantic genre, because it's not a traditional like rom-com or a romantic drama like we see on Korean TV or anything like that. It's very much an art house film about a romantic story, and it has this thing that we love, this kind of impossible love, right? Because a love that can't really happen, and that always kind of really affects the viewer in a strong way. And I think with these kind of art house romantic films that really click, the viewers go very, 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 very hard for them. So, 20 years ago, or 30 years ago now, the film that people loved was Before Sunrise, Richard Linklater's film, and that film has been mentioned a lot as a precursor to, as an influence on past lives. And there's very much a lot of similar DNA. A more recent one, it's not quite the same film, but it's had the same kind of audience furore, has been another Celine Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire. So I think it's very much, there's something there, something to be said for these kinds of movies, that these like art house, artistic, sophisticated films that are tender and subtle and deal with romance, not just kind of the more obvious rom-com or romantic tropes that we see on mainstream TV or something.
Right, so Past Lives, it talks about the universal language of love, but in a very different way, I hear. And director Song has actually said that it's not a love story. It's closer to mystery that portrays many questions about life.
I'm not sure if audiences would agree with that, though.
All right, we'll see. Now, Jason, re-release of movies from the 90s is also rejuvenating the theaters. Beat and the City of the Rising Sun, starring both Squid Game star Lee Jung-jae and Korea's eternal heartthrob Chung Woo-sung. They're due to hit theaters later this month. Could you share your expectations regarding the upcoming re-release?
Yeah, this is not a new thing, actually. They've been re-releasing old films in Korea for years, particularly non-Korean films as well. I mean, Christopher Nolan's films, and Love Actually has been re-released like every other Christmas. I think it holds the record for the amount of re-releases in Korea's theatrical market. And so, yeah, these films are obviously iconic. It's interesting that they're being re-released in March, which is the beginning of term. So, these films focus on young guys. And I think, as Piers mentioned, actually, there's just not a lot happening in theaters, not a lot being released this month. And so it may be that they're just using that opportunity to re-release titles. And, it's not expensive to do. They don't have to do much in the way of marketing. They just need to get the permission from the distributor to do it. And so they can just put it in there as long as, everyone agrees to it. And so, it makes sense, financial sense. If there's not a lot in theaters, and they can, there'll be an audience there, not a massive audience, but there will be an audience who want to see on the big screen. Well, those two films on the big screen for sure.
All right, Piers, director Hong Sang-soo's Traveler's Needs won the Silver Bear Grand Jury Prize at the Berlin International Film Festival. This actually marks Hong's 5th time that he clinched a Silver Bear Prize at Berlinale. It's almost like he's the staple of Berlinale now. How do you see this?
Well, I mean, it's a remarkable achievement. Yes, 5 Silver Bears, 4 of them in the last 5 years. I'm not sure, but that must be unprecedented. I can't imagine that's happened before. So what is it about, you know, Hong Sang-soo and juries at Berlin or other festivals? Obviously, he's probably the most prolific festival award winner among Korean filmmakers. I imagine that obviously Hong Sang-soo is a wonderful filmmaker. He makes these kind of wry and rich layered films. And I feel that when, you know, jurors are watching his movies, they have, when you're at the Berlin Film Festival, you're watching all the competition films. You know, it's an honor to be a juror. It's this kind of very fancy special job to be doing, but it's also kind of hard work. And when you're watching 3 or 4, you know, very long, deep art house, you know, contemplative films, it can be pretty exhausting. And then when you suddenly have a Hong Sang-soo film that's like 68 minutes long, and it's very wry and amusing, and it feels light, but it's actually, you can actually talk about it and dissect it, and it's actually quite layered and deep. Then suddenly, you know, the jurors can feel quite positive about that. But because he's an acquired taste and not everybody likes him, and some people do feel that his films are a bit light compared to some of the more heavier, you know, social dramas that are going to be screening in a competition. That's why he never gets the gold prize, maybe. That's just my speculation. Because he's never won the gold prize at either Venice, Cannes, or Berlin, the traditional 3 classic big European film festivals, and perhaps someday he will. But at the same time, I'm kind of wondering, do we need to keep giving him silver bears? I mean, he's got so many. Does he have space for them on his shelf anymore at this stage? Because I'd love for him to get a golden bear, to kind of, you know, a new thing, but it's getting a bit boring, him getting the silver bears. And part of me would like to see maybe a different Korean filmmaker getting that very rare slot in competition, because no one else except for Hong Sang-soo gets an invitation to the international competition of Berlinale these days.
All right, let's keep close tabs and find out. A great way to end this work week. Thank you so much, both of you, for sharing your perspectives.
Thank you for having us.
And that brings us to the end of this show. Thank you for watching, and we'll be back with more same time next week. See you then.